Welcome to the Lightforge. This is Adwukta.
This is Merps. Glad to be back after a week where, we weren't gone necessarily. There was still a Lightforge, but we weren't there in person, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were gone, but we tricked you into thinking we weren't gone.
Yes.
Because that's what we can do. We are
I don't
that
think that's the
powerful.
meaning of trickery. Trickery means, I don't know how else to define it, that we actually tricked them, but we actually explicitly told them.
That's you really did not define it. You used the word trick to define trick. You're right.
Yeah.
No, we did. We told our loyal listeners of the Lightforge that was not live, but this one is live. And this one is live because we're back. We have fully recovered. I have eaten all the meat in Texas and come back in one piece.
All the meat in Texas. That's a tall order. Wow.
I really only ate meat like real like large chunks of meat once when I was there, but it was really good.
Hmm.
And Austin's a really amazing city. So if you live in Austin, that is a good place. It's my
Right.
first time
And
visiting.
yeah, it's a place that I've definitely wanted to visit, but mostly the carnivore inside of me just really wants to do what you did and eat all
Yeah,
the meat, aka one meal.
yeah. Next time I'm going to Dallas though. Apparently better meet in Dallas, and then I'll figure it out. And how have you been doing now that you're finally back? When were you back on You were back on Friday.
Yes, but okay, so I survived two uh, apocalypses. The first was snowpocalypse, in which case DC just got hit with. They call it the Blizzard of the Century, but they call it the Blizzard of the Century every 2 3
No, but this
years.
one's actually the
So
Blizzard of the Century. I'm pretty sure. Like
uh,
unless the environmental people are right and more crazy stuff is going to happen. This was ridiculous. Like if
yeah,
you don't know, like if you're in some other part of the country or not in the U.S. and you don't know how DC, I went to school in Virginia, so I know this. But if you don't know how DC handles snow, they don't.
they
They
don't,
just like
not at
let
all.
it sit there and they put sand over the snow so that you can walk on it. Sort of. They don't like salt it. They don't like try to get rid of. Maybe they do in the middle of the city, but like as soon as you like leave the actual city proper, it's just they just don't deal with the snow.
Yes, which is good and bad. Depending on what your goal is, right?
Wait, how is
But
that
I was,
good?
yeah, well, it could be good because you could get time off, right?
Oh, fair enough.
Right.
Okay.
And it could be bad if you actually have responsibilities and or goals, stuff you want to do. It's
If
not
you
time
want
to
to
do
do
things.
stuff, that is not good. If you want to avoid doing stuff, it is very good.
Right.
Nice.
And I survived the second apocalypse, which is there's no catchy man. I should have prepared better and had a better, but no internet apocalypse. The name will come to me, and it's going to be a shame
I
because I
was gonna
wasn't
say
able
the
to.
wireless apocalypse, but then I was like, no, that just means there's no wires.
Right, right. But because of the storm and the subsequent power outage, I was without internet for a while, and I had this crazy contraption set up where I was using my neighbor's Wi-Fi for a select sort of devices, and also use my phone as a hotspot for whatever. But finally, I have normal internet now, and life is good. I survived the snow, and I survived the no internet for a week.
Awesome, awesome. So we're back, and let's get right to it. Deep fried meta, where we deep fry the meta. And since we're live now, we have like 2 whole weeks of developments to cover. This is more time of developments to cover than we have ever done in the Lightforge,
Hmm.
because and what has been happening with the meta in these 2 weeks, Merps?
Oh, I mean, it's just so much. I can't even say it, right? I'm so overwhelmed by the magnitude and quantity of things that have
This
changed
everything, it's
from the
all
meta.
different now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I used to be able to win more than 7 wins per run, and now I can't anymore. That's a huge change in the meta. Like,
So
for me in my position of observation, the meta is now ridiculous compared to where it was before we left.
this is going to be a good life forge. I could feel it, man. This bodes well for the rest of the show. So if you guys can't tell, not much has really changed, but we do want to
Yeah.
say I wouldn't necessarily say it's an extension of the Lightforge in which we were basically like, oh my gosh, the meta is incredibly difficult right now. But really, that's kind of where we're at. And this kind of holds true for every expansion, right? You see the same
No,
cycle.
don't say that.
Well, no, not the difficulty, but we're in sort of
Oh,
the
I just mean I don't want you to say that. I agree with you, but I know where you're going with this, and it's gonna end with things are just gonna keep getting harder until the next expansion comes out, and I'm already at 7 wins per run, like barely, and so I don't know how far I'm gonna fall if things are just gonna keep getting harder.
yeah. But this is just something in which it provides a new challenge, right? There you go. That's one great way to spin it.
Yes, it
You
is. I do feel challenged.
Yeah. Challenge also in the fact that, man, you just see not only good cards but good players, and that's the thing that
Yeah,
excites
no,
me.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's not like it's. We say things like, a Paladin, Coghammer, or whatever, but there are also like more good players and less bad players that I'm seeing when I'm at like 3 wins, right? Like
Right.
3 wins right now, 4 wins feels like 5, 6 wins before.
It really does. And it also changes sort of the way you play, right? I know that sometimes we don't really do this because it's not a good way to think about your plays, but
Hmm.
you can also just make a play. Or if you had a read, you could dismiss that read and be like, that's a read I would make
Yes.
if this person was a good player.
Hmm.
I don't know,
But I
it's
already
luck.
have a read that my opponent is not a good player, and so I must dismiss my normal read.
Right, right. And it changes. It's just like when you play poker, and then if you're playing against someone who is more, more green, like more brand new, maybe it changes the way you make your reads. Not saying that that person will win overall, like a lot of money, but it does kind of mess you up a little bit. It messes with your assumptions a little
Mm.
bit as well.
Yep, yep. I mean, I
So
completely agree.
that's where we're at, and we obviously are looking forward to the next expansion, but there is still a lot in this expansion to kind of figure out. Still a lot of cards in which I don't exactly know.
I need like a new focus one. It was the year of the priest. I'm kind of over it. I need a new New Year's resolution.
No,
Because
this is
I really need to get rid of the year of the. We said this before, right? The year of the priest is all the rest of my classes are now as bad as my priest was. Not my priest got better. So let's swap this. Let's do something else.
no, this is perfect. You exemplify you are the gold standard for New Year's resolutions. You make it, and then before January ends, you either change it or drop it. And you're considering doing both of them right
Oh my
now.
god. Well, if the New Year's resolution was kinder to me, I would have maybe stuck with it a little longer. But I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna make it the year of something else. I don't know what. I don't know what. Maybe I'll figure this out. Maybe it's not a mention this today, right now, and on the spot. Think of a resolution I'll keep for the rest of the year, kind of deal.
Okay, you guys can offer us suggestions as well, right? By
Hmm.
feel free to tweet at Adwukta about what year it should be for him, not for me,
Is
because
it still
I
the year of the shaman priest for you?
yes, it still
Okay.
is,
Okay.
and I will stick to that because I'm not a quitter like you.
Hey, well, it's only not the year of the priest or the year of the shaman for me because I'm doing well with both of those classes.
Okay, maybe you should change it to New Year's resolution: become more humble.
Oh no,
Period.
no, no, no! But that's like you have to have a resolution that you want to do, right? Like that has to be a positive thing. Like you can't have a New Year's resolution. It's like be a worse human being. Like no,
Well, no,
that's
I'm telling you to be
counterproductive.
a better human being.
No, no, no. See, like that's fundamental levels of disagreement here, right? We're not going to resolve a human nature and ethics and meta ethics in an early episode of the Lightforge.
Wow. It hasn't even been 10 minutes yet, and look where we
We're
went
at
to.
meta ethics. That was my major back in college, so I get to sound pretentious while talking about it without giving any
Yeah.
details of what the hell meta ethics is. Um, okay, so that's deep fried meta. We're moving on from that. We'll actually have like a real deep fried meta, besides like things are hard next week. But really things haven't. There's one thing I have noticed while I've been floundering about this last like week and a half is it's gotten. I am seeing more aggro decks, like what I would call, I'm almost going to call traditional aggro decks, but it's not really a traditional aggro deck. It's a GVG style, maybe BRM style kind of aggro deck. And it never left. It never disappeared. It was always pretty good. It was just harder to create. And now I think people are realizing that it's not as hard as it was in the TGT era, and it's still really good. Especially with all these cards that are discover mechanic or like use your hero power mechanic that slow things down. Otherwise, you can still have very good results with the fast deck. And so I'm seeing them more and more. And they've been very effective. So that's one small observation I'll make, and we may talk about this more next week. But for now, I'm gonna take another week to get my thoughts together. And right now, all I know is life is hard in the arena.
Indeed.
And it's
all
only
right, so
getting
let's
harder.
move on to something that actually has a little bit of substance.
Oh yeah. We wanted to end this also, the deep fried meta, a little quicker today, so we can get to something that's not actually part of the meta, but it's very good. Like, it's more like, instead of the meta, which is what's outside of you and what you're dealing with, this is like you're the soul of the player, if you will. This is the soul of the Hearthstone player that we are now examining. Sorry, I've also been playing Phoenix Wright a little, so I'm into really cheesy territory here, but as Hearthstone players, we all kind of like have to have our own identities, and we also have our own quirks and our own habits, and not just like which cards I like, but like how you do things, right? Like, do you click on the board here and there? You know, what are you thinking? What are you doing on your opponent's turns? How do you order your plays? Do you hover over your cards? Do you drag your cards around? And now we're going to dig deep into a fundamental unit of Hearthstone, the turn.
Wow, that was pretty good. 8 out of 10, not bad.
Nice.
All right,
I'll take it.
So this is a segment that I kind of pitched to Adwukta, and so I have a very big list, and I'll explain why I want to talk about this. It's something in which I think is very confusing for some players. I think it's confusing for beginner, intermediate players, and even some advanced players as well.
It was confusing to me, and I think I learned a lot when you pitched it to me. So
there you go. We not only try to educate you guys listening in, we try to educate each other. Or in this case, I just tried to explain something to Adwukta and just got very blank stare. And I'm like,
people do this? It sounds like it would be helpful.
It does. So I want to talk today about turn planning and what you do from the beginning of your turn to the end of your turn. So your opponent just dropped cards, played stuff, traded, went face, whatever, clicked end turn on his side. You draw a card, your turn starts, and you have however many seconds until you either get roped or click your end turn. Like, what do you do from beginning to end? And I thought of it mostly because I've been asked the question a couple of times on stream, and also I just kind of finished up coaching sessions yesterday, so the idea is fresh in my mind as well.
Mm-hmm.
I have a big list, but before I go on, Adwukta, explain your process, because this just intrigues me to no end.
Okay, here's my process for what happens, right? My opponent is doing stuff, and while my opponent is doing stuff, I'm putting myself in their shoes, I'm trying to make reads, I'm trying to figure out, like based on what their move is, what cards they could possibly have, what they're trying to do. And then it's my turn, right? And I have a bunch of information that I've been gathering before. I have information I know. I get this new card, which is new information, right? And so I have a lot of information that I'm going to look at as premises for my turn. And then I'm going to take them and I'm going to make them into the correct decision. And then I'm going to do it. Or I don't, and I misplay. But most of the time I do it.
So
and rarely I think I do it, but I don't because I misclick.
Right. So his entire process is like, step 1, make the play. Step 2, refer to step 1. That's basically it. Or
there's profit somewhere in there.
Yes, sometimes. But it's like the internet meme where, it's like the tutorial on how to draw the owl. It's like, step 1, draw 2 circurs. Step 2, draw the rest of the owl.
No, that's exactly how I do it.
That's exactly
how my turn works.
Okay. Now,
like you guys hear me talk about it on stream, right? My turn. It's usually not terribly complicated to explain my thought process. It's like, well, I have these things, so this is better. And I sometimes say like, well, the other alternative that had better other thing. Like usually it's a card advantage, tempo discussion. It could be reach or whatever. And then I say why I don't want that other thing more than I want this thing, because this type of value is better than that type of value for my current thing. And that's there's no process there, right? Like I had facts and I made a decision.
Right. Okay, so you've gotten Adwukta's very unique sense of turn planning, one that I would not recommend, and one that is very difficult to replicate.
No,
And
it's easy to replicate.
I will provide you guys with mine, which actually includes a list,
Wow.
and one that you can sort of check. Yes, exactly.
Very scientific.
So get your pen and paper, or because we're not living in the past, just
and because you're probably working out and or driving while listening to this.
Yeah, dish the pen and paper, and you can just feel free to listen. So the first thing I do when a turn starts, after you draw your card, is I like to remind myself, do I have any reads on this opponent? And obviously this connects to the previous turn and your turns before that as well. So first, you want to remind yourself, do I have any reads? If it's against a paladin, which 99% of the time it is, do I have a read on consecration? Do I have a read on true silver champion? Do I have a read on a buff? Right? If he, like last turn, if he could have played Blessing of Kings and dominated my board, he probably would have, instead of just dropping a 4-drop or something. So first, make your reads. Second, has anything changed based on your opponent's turn? And I'll explain this a little bit based at the end of my little spiel, where at the end of your turn, you always want to think about, well, what am I expecting next turn? So a simple thing is, after your turn 3, you say, well, on turn 4, I expect my opponent to put out something with 5 health, right? Yeti. That's a fair assumption. 1 minion, 5 health.
Like there's stuff with 6 health, but you're generally not playing around that.
Yeah, it's pretty weak. They can also like power turtle you, right? Oasis Snapshot.
Oh, the power turtle.
Exactly. But that's not something that you really expect.
I mean, you didn't even mention the power Mogushan.
I did not. That is true. I totally forgot that
8 is more than 7. Is that what you forgot?
Where are you getting the 8 from? Mogushan is 7.
Is Mogushan 7?
Yes, it's a 1/7.
What's 8?
The
tournament medic. That's what I meant. I know this game. I've played these cards before.
See, people listen to us because they assume that we know this stuff.
We did. We figured it out.
Between
us, we figured it out.
We do as a collective.
Yes, exactly.
I do. As long as one of us gets it, it counts.
Yes. No, that's how we do things.
Yeah. Oh, I like this. Okay. All right. There you go. So, bringing it back. You want to think, has anything changed based on your opponent's turn, right? So this is number 2. And next, you want to go through all of your options in your hand. So you have all your hands. Look at the cards that are lit up, right? If you have a Force Tank Max and it's turn 8, obviously, that's out of consideration. You look at all of your possible options, and then you want to narrow down your options by doing 3 things. Number 1, you eliminate the obvious suboptimal plays, right? So a great example of this, I think, is like it's turn 4. You could do one of 3 things. You could either put down a Cult Master, put down a Yeti, or put down 2 2-drops. And if it's an empty board, you're definitely not going to put out the Cult Master, right? Like there is basically no situation in which you would put out the Cult Master over the Yeti or over the 2 2-drops. So you eliminate the Cult Master right away. And then you go to the next step, which is implications of each resulting play. So you think about like, well, if I put out the Yeti, what happens? If I put out the 2 2-drops, what happens, right? Then you think about kind of the flexibility, the mana flexibility versus, having one big minion on the board. That's where you think about that. And then you bring in next turn considerations. You think about, well, playing the Yeti, what happens to my next turn? Maybe it's more flexibility because I didn't just play my 2 small cards. If you play your 2 small cards, you think, well, maybe it gives me more options on the board. It gives me more hits. You want to think about your next turn considerations. And finally, at the very end, after you've played out your, your cards, you've laid it all out, then you want time to think, what can I expect from my opponent for next turn, right? So you want to think it's turn 5. You probably expect a 5/5 or a 4/6, and you end your turn. And that's it. That is the process from beginning to end of at least how I organize my turns.
Okay. So to sum this up, first you remember your reads because you've already been making your reads. You don't need to make any more reads. You remember your reads. Then,
very good.
Then what do you do next?
Next, you ask, has anything changed based on your opponent's turn?
Like, so I thought that was part of making the read.
No. You remind yourself of the reads that you've made.
Okay,
right?
okay, that's all one. That's all one.
True.
You have made reads in the past. You're making the reads when your opponent makes a play. Now you're still on. You're still with the reads. You got your reads.
Yes.
They're there.
Yep.
Okay. So then you.
Okay, and after that, you go through all of your options.
And then you discard the crappy ones.
And
the ones that you're not physically allowed to make.
Right. And so up to this point, after you've gained experience with just Hearthstone Arena in general and kind of the thought process, you basically want to think of like the first 2 or 3 steps, however you want to define it, should take you less than 5 seconds. All this should take you less than 5 seconds.
Yep.
And then afterwards, you want to think about the implications of each resulting play. And this could take you up to like 60, 70 seconds.
Okay. Right? So this is the meat of it. You're thinking you have like usually 2, sometimes 3 things you can actually do with the board and your cards. And then you pick whichever one's the right one after you do your consideration. See, this is the step I focus on because this is like the only step I do that I consider a step.
Right.
But after that,
you think about the next turn considerations.
Usually mana considerations, right? Like if you're playing a 4-drop here, you save your 2-drop. If you have another 3-drop, then next turn you could do 2 and 3, or you could do just a 5-drop. If you had, not done that and you play your 2-2-drops, well, next turn you have to play your 5-drop, or you're not playing mana efficient, or you have to top deck something. So you're looking at your next turn mana considerations, which weighs into the step before that on which play you should make, right? Because like it's part of it may not be how good it is this turn, but it's part of your, how good this play is for me. And then you have one more thing where after all this, you look at what your opponent can do the next turn.
Yes. Then you lay out the expectations from your opponent for next turn, and you end your turn. That is my thought process from beginning to end. Now, it doesn't have to be your thought process, right? This is just how I sort of think through my turn. It's how I organize it, and it keeps it very clean and it keeps it very efficient. Because
and you actually like tick through the checklist, like so it says your turn or whatever Hearthstone says. Does it say your turn when it's your turn?
I don't know, actually. This is something that
I've been playing Phoenix Wright too much. I think everything just like pops out at you in giant letters now.
Objection.
Like everything. But yeah, like, okay, so if your turn doesn't pop up to you, somehow you're reminded by the game that it's your turn, and then you go through, okay, what are my reads? Okay, like, do I have any new reads? Okay, what are my plays that are stupid? Okay, what are my possible options? And then you actually tick through it like that.
Well, so you guys out there know that once you practice something many times, it becomes sort of second nature to you, right? You no longer have to, check things off. It just becomes like riding a bike. Like when you were first learning,
but those are you're still going in that order.
Yeah,
like, you're not like saying like step 1, do this, but you're like you're doing it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And sometimes you'll see me when I explain it. I do sort of remind myself of my reads first, and then you go through that, and then I just go through my turn like this. And that's basically it. And like I said, I spend most of my time thinking of the implications of each resulting play, right?
That's very disciplined. I could use that. Sometimes because I just do it, and then sometimes I can't do it and it ropes. And if you ask me what happened, I would have no idea. Because my brain just didn't put everything together fast enough and come to a conclusion. Unless it's, sometimes I can't add, and then I know exactly why I spend more time than the rope allowed. But generally, I get a little tired. Maybe it's a second or third run, after long days of work, and then I'm just like, one. So it would probably be good to like actually have a disciplined way of going through it, so you're pushing yourself ahead and you don't just like blank out for like 20 seconds.
Right. And I encourage everyone to, if you don't have to use mine, but if you're having trouble sort of with like information overload, sensory overload, right? You begin a turn, you have 7 cards in your hand, let's say, and you're just like, oh man, I don't know. Like my opponent just did this. Like
Mm-hmm.
what do I think about first, right? It's good to have a checklist. That's why we have these checklists.
Mm-hmm.
This is a checklist for me based on my however many games that I've played, and I've made this mental checklist for
Cool.
myself. It's something that you can borrow, but or you could just
Take, because they're not going to give it back.
fine. They could take it, or you could make your own checklist, or you could do what Adwukta does and just sort of toss everything
Just
at a
wing
wall.
it.
Yeah, you're basically like Jackson Pollock, right? Where
Uh-huh.
you just randomly fling stuff onto a canvas, but somehow it's
Oh,
it
but
works,
the
right?
stuff that I'm flinging is all good stuff. That's
Right.
part of the premises. Like once you have the good stuff, you fling it at a wall, and then you see what makes sense.
Right.
And I'm
But
incorporating a lot of the things you're saying, but like not in that like way, right? Like not in that order. There's no order. Which we were talking about this earlier. This could be why I have some ordering problems. Like if you see me like, not pay attention or slip up or something, one of the first misplays I'll make is that I'll misorder something. Which is different than when I misposition things, because when I misposition things, it's just because I have no idea what I'm doing. When I misorder things, like I know the right order. This is not like something that's beyond my grasp. I have already figured it out in my head, but in my head, I'm not saying do this and then do this and then do this. In my head, I'm saying you make this type of play and then you get this type of card advantage and tempo out onto this type of board, which would be the end state. And if you think like that, which is the way that I think, you like and you sometimes miss the ordering part of it because you just think it'll all work out once you like throw your cards on the board, Jackson Pollock style.
there you go. But I think this is a good way for people to identify their potential misplays as well, right? Because you can say, oh man, I average 5 wins a game. I don't. Mhm.
Sorry. Okay, we rarely interrupt the Lightforge for a comment from chat. But this is good enough that I'm going to take it. Altar Slayer TC says, insert check for lethal in between every single step and you're good. And I hadn't noticed that, but your method does not have check for lethal
Well,
in
no,
the
no, no.
entire thing.
Well, no, that's included in has anything changed based on your opponent's turn, right? And it goes to the end.
Okay,
Of
okay.
what can I
So,
expect from my
all
opponent?
right.
That should be
Okay,
obvious.
okay.
Right?
So at that point, you're supposed to be checking for lethal. When
Yeah.
you reevaluate how much life your opponent has, whether there's a taunt or whatever, and what your next card is.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
So that should be because the final step is what can I expect from my opponent next turn, right? That should be your synthesis at the end of the turn that focuses on your opponent. And then there it should just be like, okay, do I have lethal? What does he have to do to prevent lethal from me, right? Like a taunt, a heal. And then at the beginning, you have your remind yourself of reads, and then afterwards it's like, okay, what has changed, right? If nothing has changed and you had lethal before, you have lethal again. So, but yes, take lethal if you have it.
There we go. All right.
There you go.
Okay. That was, I think that was helpful. I'm certainly going to do things that way from now on when I get tired. Because my way works for me, generally speaking, but then I get tired and I think it kind of falls apart on me. And sometimes I know it, like I know it's happening, but I have no way to stop it besides like not playing, and I don't want to not play because I'm like 7-2 or whatever, and I want to finish the run. So this will be very useful to me personally. So that's good, and I hope it'll be useful for you guys, because I mean the Lightforge is about the arena. It's about improving in the arena and all of this stuff, right? Like we like to talk about the meta because that's something that's like hard. Not like difficult hard, but like objective hard almost, right?
Yes.
Like we can tell you what the meta is, and then you can adjust your strategy or whatever to help with it, and we can teach you strategies of like why a 2-3 is better on turn 2 than a 3-2, except in these circumstances or like whatever. But there's other stuff of like how to look at your turn. That's going to have a big effect on your improvement as well. So we'll take detours into that here and there. But let's move on to the question from the GOAT. So, first, thank you to all of our Patreon subs. Patreons, you guys are amazing. This is how the Lightforge lives. This is how our GOAT gets its grass. And if you are interested in supporting us and joining and becoming a Patreon, please go to patreon.com/grinninggoat and throw us a few bucks if you are a frequent listener. What is today's question from the GOAT?
Okay, so this week's question from the GOAT stems from a tweet and kind of a teaser that Blizzard came out with, where they had this little clip and it had a hashtag of like beasts versus demons versus dragons versus mechs, murlocs, pirates, whatever, all the tribes, right? And totems. Yes, this is something that I don't even consider it in the same class.
The vitality totem always wins
all the freaking time. So that was sort of a teaser from Blizzard, and the question from the GOAT is, which do you prefer out of all of those tribes? And it could be for any reason: power level, fun, whatever.
Okay, not totem.
That can't just be your answer. You have to pick.
Both on power level and on fun, not totem.
You can use any criteria you want.
Okay. All right. So we have mechs, we have pirates, we have dragons, and they're like the overall ones that kind of apply similarly to every. Not even actually. Pirates are a little favored by rogue, right?
Yes.
Oh man. Okay. So then there are beasts, which is hunter and somewhat druid, and then there's demons, which is clearly warlock.
Yes.
Okay, so totems are out. Dragons are out. They're too weird and loose and
Murlocs. You forgot to talk about Murlocs.
Oh yeah, because they were never even in contention. Everyone knows I hate Murlocs. I don't hate them. They're generally irrelevant into a game until they're like way too relevant. It's like not the balance that I want.
Right.
When I'm picking these. Okay, I think I'm going to go with pirates. Demons are a little too central to warlock. I feel like that's identical, and that would be like picking a class, and that's not the way I want to go with this. Beasts I like. They're beasts. They're kind of the standard, like, general positive feelings towards. But again, a lot of classes don't have a lot of interactions with them, so they don't do a lot unless you're a druid or a hunter. Mechs are evil. I think we all know this. The dark age of Hearthstone was GVG, as far as I'm concerned, for the arena. So that's definitely out of the picture. I have no good feelings about mechs. And so we're left with pirates. They're unobtrusive, right? They never get to the point where you're like, oh my god, these pirate synergies are wrecking me, unlike Murlocs. And
wait until next expansion. Who knows, right?
Oh god. I hope they don't destroy pirates like that. I like the pirates as being the stable one, right? Like, it seems really counterintuitive, but pirates, as far as a tribe goes, they're the stable tribe. They're the tribe where, like, it's not too much RNG, there's not too much crazy stuff going on, they're not too powerful, they have, like, just the right, like, balance while not being spectacular in any way, kind of, like, balance. And I really like that. I appreciate that from a tribe. Because when you do tribal synergies, you're already just getting extra stuff,
Yeah.
So when that gets crazy, that gets really crazy. And I just don't like that kind of swing. And it's really exemplified by, like, totems and murlocs.
Yeah. Just wait until next expansion when they give paladins muster for pirates and pirate knight.
Oh my god. Is muster for pirates get a weapon and then get 3 random pirates?
No, get all South Sea deckhands.
That's evil. Why would you even say that? Blizzard listens to this.
I hope not. I hope they do.
So you have just planted an idea in their heads, and they may really just make it happen. But I hope they recognize that pirates will never succumb to the evil influence of the paladin, because they are dynamically opposed to what the paladin stands for. That's another thing that's good about pirates, right? They're very anti-paladin and they're very anti-priest.
What the paladin stands for.
What does the paladin say? Oh, well, besides blatant unfairness and power, general, like, healing, good, order, following the rules, right? Like, pirates don't follow the rules.
That's what they're supposed to stand for, That's what they're supposed to stand for. But actions mean louder than words, right? And the actions of the paladin are secretive and scummy and really annoying. Pirates.
But the actions of pirates are nice and cuddly and fair. So not paladins. I
Is
just
your
don't
only
think.
exposure
You
to
know what?
pirates
I think
like
Blizzard is
Pirates of
too
the Caribbean?
focused on the soul of the card and not enough focused on the soul of the tribe.
Oh,
I
okay.
think they've lost focus when it comes to the pirates and what they're making them, and I hope they continue to lose focus because now pirates have an identity in the world of Hearthstone, and I like that identity, and I don't want them to change it. And if they do change it, they better make another tribe to replace pirates.
All
They,
right, there
they
we go.
talk about Blizzard talks a lot about how much they like dragons, right, and how well balanced dragons are, and I think they're right. Dragons are very balanced. I just don't like the mechanic because it has a lot to do with like holding stuff in your hand and the odds of you drawing something. Which if you have a card draw deck or something and construct it, sure that works. But in the arena, it is really just random,
It is.
and so that kind of defeats part of the balance of the dragon. So that overall it may be balanced, but in each individual instance, it's generally not balanced. Dragon synergies are insanely powerful if you pull them off, and pirates are just a lot less so, and that's what I like about it. They're incremental kind of bonuses, and they don't generally rely on. Like it feels like they're very arena friendly. Let me put it that way.
They are. Okay, now that you've had your 10-minute answer, I will give my 30-second answer. I agree with pirates, but not because of your broad sweeping reasons and statements. It's because firing the cannon is the best feeling. It is the best feeling, okay? Firing everything about firing the cannon, okay? Because the cannon, it's so innocent looking, right? It's just a 2-3 95, maybe that's even, but whatever percentage of the time. And
Yeah,
then we
yeah.
get to
And
fire.
you know what's worse about it? It's just a cannon. It's not even
Yes.
like an animate object.
No, it's
Everything
a
else is
cannon.
an animate object.
But firing the cannon in the arena just makes me feel like this game is worth playing. Okay. It is one of the driving factors. There's something so satisfying about firing the cannon. And I know it's just like a conditionally better, but like judging by percentages, it's worse than a knife juggler, right? Like knife juggler, you just play whatever. But it's just so good.
Mhm.
And when the cannon fires and you snipe that 3-2 on the board,
Oh yes.
oh my god.
Oh yes. I don't even
Best
care
feeling.
what it hits as long as it's not face.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes even when it hits face, I'm like, all right, you know what? It's time to go aggro.
It's a
Face
bonus.
damage.
It's just such a nice free bonus.
It really is. So that's my answer. Firing the cannon, it's got to be pirates.
Okay.
Boom.
Okay, that's fair. And I think part like that's what makes it like good, right? Like it's really freaking hard to fire the cannon. It's
Yes.
pretty much impossible to fire it on turn 2 or turn 3. When you do fire it, it generally happens much later in the game, and so that's why it's balanced. But it's still exciting. See, Blizzard, you can do both. Okay. Let's move on to Card Good Bad, where we tell you whether a card is good or bad. And today we have 4 cards, which share a soul of the card. Never mind. They don't really share a soul. They share a function. And to Blizzard, these
Which
are
is
very
not the
different
soul.
things.
Yeah, exactly.
The soul is your stat points and your mana cost. The function is the thing that you're allowed to change, and it doesn't matter. So
Right.
these 4 things share a function, but they each have their own souls. They all have their own souls. And they are Cruel Taskmaster, Undercity Valiant, Ironforge Rifleman, and Elven Archer.
Yeah, so one of these things doesn't belong with the other. Well, you could say that Undercity Valiant is a great card, right? Cruel Taskmaster for Warriors, great card. Elven Archer, you guys should know how we feel about Elven Archer. It is a
We had a
very
whole 10-minute argument on the Lightforge at one point about who was the Elven Archer hipster.
exactly, and it's me, by the way. It's definitely
I'm
me.
not arguing today.
It's because I won, so there's no need for argument.
okay.
There we go. And then there's Ironforge Rifleman, which is like the awkward buddy who stands around and definitely doesn't really belong there. But yeah,
He kind of does the same thing if you really
kind
need
of
him
does. Yeah, that's like saying I kind of do the same thing as Michael Jordan. I just score at a much slower and much more inefficient.
If you're a D-League NBA player, you're kind of like Michael Jordan. You play the game of basketball. If you're a shooting guard, you may play similar roles on some plays.
Yeah, There you go. And if we extrapolate even further, I do like 1/100th of what a D League player does, right?
Really? You're that good at basketball?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
A guy can dream, right?
100.
A guy can dream. There you go. But we really, so we started off this week wanting to talk about the cruel taskmaster, right? And this is something you want to talk about. And I think it goes to kind of the relevance of the warrior right now, and also just how flexible, because this is more than the ping, right? It's a little bit more than ping. With the others, it's really about the ping. With cruel task, it is about the flexibility as well, and the fact that a lot of times on turn 2, that ping is relevant against turn 1 plays on your opponent. It also synergizes well with a lot of the warrior cards. And so the cruel taskmaster,
the things that require you to be injured.
Yes, that is true. Great rampage. Oh man, raging worgen, cruel task, rampage. Pretty
cruel
nice.
Task execute.
Yeah, and it also kind of shows, if you look at the 2 class cards, Cruel Taskmaster versus Undercity Valiant, Undercity Valiant offers an additional ping to a class that already has a ping, right? Cruel Taskmaster offers not just a ping to a non-ping class, it offers the flexibility of pinging your opponent or pinging your own guy to get more
2
attack.
more damage if you can pull it off, if the stars align. And even if you have no target, you can just deal more face damage, which is very useful for a warrior who loses the card advantage battle as the game goes on to most classes.
Now, you can look at sort of the downside of these 2 cards, right? And Undercity Valiant's downside is lessened because you could just play it as a raptor. While Cruel Taskmaster's downside is that sometimes, you have nothing to activate, and you can injure their minion for 1, but you give them more attack, and you might not want that because it just doesn't fit with your board or your goal.
So and it's a 2/2.
Yes, and it's a 2/2. Yeah, that might be the most important part of it.
So if it comes out after your opponent's 2/3, it's fine. Your opponent just has a 4/2 and hits you to the face once. But if it comes out before, right, like you're kind of screwed. You can't. Like you go first, your opponent passes after your turn 1. Your Cruel Taskmaster may come out, but it's a really crappy card at that point.
Right. So that's like the downside, but in the end, sort of the upside is huge, especially for warrior, and we want to talk about it because it really does fit in with how the warrior is, not at the top of the meta, but it is pretty strong. It's middle of the pack, right? I think we both categorize it as middle of the pack. And because of stuff like Obsidian Destroyers really being able to anchor the late game, having early game cards that not only are sort of very powerful but offer flexibility lets the warrior get to the late game where your Obsidian Destroyers can hopefully be really annoying and dominate the board.
Yeah, and it's just that flexibility. When you're a warrior, you need the flexibility because you don't have a hero power to give you the flexibility. So you need cards that give you flexibility, and the most flexible cards are drops, right? So you're going to have a lot of drops, and then you're going to have some other cards, and all of their other cards are highly situational besides weapons, right? Like you just like when we're talking about Rampage, but also like Cleave, your Slams, your Executes, your Battle Rages. They're great cards, but one, you can't have too many of them because they only fit certain situations. It's like having multiple Kodos, right? Like they're good, but you don't have too many of them. And here is this great flexible card where, yes, it's not a drop. It can fill a utility function, but that utility function is pretty much anything. Like it's Swiss Army Taskmaster, right? Like he is not a specialist. He is not a professional. He is management. He manages anybody below him, and he makes them do something in any kind of situation. He just improves their utility on the board at that point. And so it's something the warrior desperately needs. If Cruel Taskmaster was on mage, I think people would care a lot less about him. But for a warrior, it's very necessary. And Undercity Valiant's kind of just an overpowered card, right? So it gets on there just because of how useful the ping is. But we heavily underrated Undercity Valiant when it came out because we thought, well, look, it's a Raptor. Otherwise, it's a 3/2 at a time when 3/2s don't matter that much, and it deals 1 damage. How much is 1 damage really going to matter? And the answer is that 1 damage matters a whole freaking lot.
Yes. And it goes to the rogue philosophy of swing turns, right? Of being able to just do a lot more than is expected on one
Hmm.
turn if the rogue decides to kind of power out. And the Understudy Valiant is really just like you could see how much one damage is worth if you look at neutral cards, right?
Yep.
Ironforge Rifleman compared to Understudy Valiant. A lot of times, so the Understudy Valiant sort of downside is that you have to combo, right?
Hmm.
But if you combo it, like you can see Blizzard definitely values the initiative and the ping of the Ironforge Rifleman
Yep.
as a neutral card. And you get one more stat and the same flexible damage for one less mana. So you're gaining essentially 3 stat points
Hmm.
compared to Ironforge, because one mana you can call
Yep.
+1/+1. It's
And
not always
it's
+1,
3 stat points for
but
2 mana. That's
yeah,
ridiculous.
yep.
So
So
yeah.
it's so good paired with your dagger, which
Hmm.
is attacks coming from different angles, right?
Yeah, and if you're thinking, well, that's just how much combos are worth, look at Eviscerate. That's 1 extra damage for the combo effect. I mean, it's 2 extra
Mhm.
damage, but the base card is crappy, right? So it should
Right,
be
right.
2 mana, 3 damage. It's 2 mana, 4 damage, and because combo. Look at Defias Ringleader, right? You get it should be like a 2/3 or something, or a 3/2, and instead it's a 2/2, and it gets a 2/1 body, which means it got two stats worth, right? Eviscerate
Yep.
gets 1 damage worth. Undercity Valiant gets that same benefit, and Ironforge Rifleman gets a penalty, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Ironforge Rifleman gets a penalty because that ability is considered so strong. And to look at how strong that ability is, look at Elven Archer. A Wisp is a 1/1. It costs no mana. Elven Archer essentially combines that with a 1 mana deal 1 damage card.
Yep.
As far as tempo goes, right? And Elven Archer, so it's not supposed to be all that good. A 1 mana,
No.
1 damage card is pretty bad. That's like a Frost Shock without the freeze. So it has a Wisp body with the ability to do something, and you have the value of the Wisp card kind of like added onto here to mitigate the fact that 1 damage is not terribly great in and of itself, and you end up with this pretty amazingly flexible utility card.
Right. It's at a certain point when it, it's not all about the sort of like sum of its like you don't look at just the parts of the card, right? Where you say, okay, it's a wisp and it's a very expensive ping put together. And this is where sort of a card's worth is measured by its flexibility, like you said, or
Hmm.
just this, like how you use it in situations and how it plays out relative to
Yeah,
all the other cards in the game, right?
yeah,
And that's where Elven Archer, where if you look at it on paper, you're like, it's not that great. And we've seen Elven Archer time and time again really save, not only, save a turn, but almost win a game,
yeah.
right? The
Hmm.
swing that an Elven Archer adds is sometimes, like equal to more than a Piloted Shredder, more
Yeah,
than all these other cards that just don't offer you
right.
this really clutch ping.
And then we talk about the clutch ping. Why is the ping clutch? It's because the ping is the most flexible unit of damage because it is only one. You'll never over damage anything. You will always get value out of the ping.
Yeah.
And so that's why we keep talking about flexibility. Yeah, other cards, like any kind of small card, is a little more flexible than a large card, but this 1 extra damage is the most flexible unit of thing that you can do in Hearthstone. And so that's why these cards are good, and I think Blizzard recognizes it, or else they wouldn't have made Ironforge Rifleman. That's such a huge penalty, right? Between
It
Elven
is.
Archer and Ironforge Rifleman, that's 2 mana for a 1/1 body. It's because Blizzard knew that if you make these very normally statted minions be able to ping, that's going to create all sorts of havoc in terms of just giving the person with those cards control over the board. So your opponent will try to like eke out any kind of slight advantage, and that'll be wiped away immediately by these cards in a very efficient manner.
Yeah.
So this is also why you don't see a card that's 4/4 deal 1 damage to a minion.
Right. So the philosophy between Ironforge Rifleman and Elven Archer, and you're like, well, how can this exist? How can Ironforge Rifleman be that much more expensive? It's because Elven Archer is dipping into the inherent worth of
Yeah.
being a card,
Hmm.
right? It's cashing in on the fact that it is a card. So one
Yeah.
out of like in constructed or arena,
It's
the
like why they thought Doctor Six was potentially balanced. It's because the
yeah,
Paladin Secrets are 1 mana, so it can dip into the cards, and then they're like, wait, but the Paladin Secrets already get extra value than what they should get because
exactly.
they are, secrets and they're only 1 mana.
Right. So that was something where if you thought about it a little bit more, maybe Dr. Six wouldn't exist.
Uh,
But yeah, you always have to be careful when evaluating these cards because as you get bigger and bigger, right? Like when you get to cracking level, sort of the value of the card is less than the value of the stats and everything
mm,
is magnified. But for something like Elven Archer, if you look at sort of the pie chart of its worth, the fact that it takes up a card, like
yeah.
that is a big part of it,
Yeah,
right?
and otherwise, like once you take it out of the equation, you get the true value of what a ping's worth, which is
Yes.
like like Ironforge Rifleman is not a great card, but it's still kind of usable, and that's where it is, and that's a ridiculous penalty. Even if you treat one damage, like typically you treat one damage as the same as a 1/1, right? Because a Moonfire versus a Wisp.
Right,
Um,
right.
but Ironforge Rifleman would be a 3 mana 3/3 in that case,
Yeah.
and they felt the need to penalize him, and I think there was reason for it, and it's the same reason it's prevented Blizzard from making these like large cards that deal 1 damage, and it's also why something like Dread Inferno, even though it clears your board too, is insanely good because
Yes.
it is a large card that's only has a very tiny value gap and it deals 1 damage.
Right.
All right, so
Okay.
that's a pretty thorough card good bad. Let's move on to our final topic. Class talk, Druid. So we're back at the Druid now in OE, and I want to start this conversation off because I love the Druid. It's always not my top class, but one of the classes, right? It's always like a second tier class for me. No matter what's
Yeah.
happening with the meta, and by second tier, I don't mean like there's 3 tiers, it's tier 2. I mean like if there's like 5 tiers, it's tier 2.
Yes.
I've done better with it than the median, and I think a lot of people feel this way about the Druid. I don't think I'm the only one. Back in the day, Trump very famously had Druid as his best class, even though quite clearly to anyone else it should be Mage or Rogue. And it's because Druid can do the whole value thing. It can handle it back then, especially with the prevalence of larger cards, and it's pretty flexible. It has a lot of choose ones, which allow you to kind of pick whether you want the max value of the card, in which case the choose one is usually overvalued compared. I mean, the card itself has more value than a card even with no choose one, right? You look at like Druid of the Saber, you look at Druid of the Flame, you look at Druid of the Claw. If you take the best version of what they have, that's a card, right?
Yep.
Like that's a pretty good card. And then on top of that, you get the flexibility. So it also has a lot of removals, small, big, all sorts of stuff. It didn't have hard removals. Now it kind of has a few like weird, epic hard removals or a rare hard removal. But that's kind of its downside in terms of playing the game, right? A Druid, it plays honestly. It doesn't cause the big swings. It doesn't do whatever. Swipe, sort of questionably, like the one exception.
Right. So I think we've talked about this, and you mentioned it right now. It's a key word that I like to use. The Druid plays honestly, right? And what
Mm-hmm.
that means is there's no sort of cheat mechanism, and by that,
Snakes.
yeah,
It has to be snakes. So the Druid's getting a little trickier, but generally
it
speaking,
is. It is. But generally speaking, and especially in Classic, right?
mm-hmm.
Like, what is the Druid known for? And if you look at sort of the in RPGs they have those like that hexagram where like you see certain classes that are powerful in one
Yep.
area and weaker in others,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
If you looked at druids, it would be
Right in the middle.
power and flexibility, right?
Oh, I would put it right in the middle of everything. But yes.
But yeah, like
Because
its strongest
it
point
has reach, right? It has Savage Roar. It has a hero power that deals 1 damage to your opponent each turn. It has
Right.
survivability. It has, taunts. It has the ability to armor up out of danger,
Right.
given enough turns.
Yeah. So the druid plays the most honestly, and the definition of that is it doesn't have a polymorph, it doesn't have hex, what it has are sort of like big minions that are flexible and are really powerful, right? And that's sort of where it beats you. And
Yep.
sure, it has cards like Wild Growth and Innervate as well. But this is also the arena that we're talking about. And those cards, while they can, do crazy stuff as well, it's not a huge part of the arena meta, just like in Constructed. In Constructed, every single Druid deck runs Innervate and Wild Growth, right?
Hmm.
Almost every single Druid deck runs both of those cards. And that is sort of the playstyle of the Druid in Constructed. In Arena, not saying that those are terrible cards and you wouldn't draft them, but the playstyle of the Druid in the Arena is just a sort of like, I'm going to drop powerful minions with taunt sometimes, more often than other classes.
Yep.
I have Beast Synergy, but that's not the biggest part of my
Hmm.
of my toolkit. But I'm going to drop these powerful minions with flexibility. Either like Druid of the Claw, like you said, Savage Combatant, which is flexible and just
Yeah.
ridiculous, right? You basically get a free Wrath almost, or Iron,
Hmm.
uh,
Iron Bark.
Iron Bark Protector. I always call Iron Beak now
I
because you
know.
call it
I
that
do it
sometimes.
sometimes.
Oh man,
They're not real
and
words.
they're not, which makes it hard. At least that's
Yes.
my excuse. I don't know about you.
Well, I'm not good with real words either, but I'm even worse with fake words.
That's true.
uh, but yeah, like it has the flexibility to do things, but it's so why? Let's get back to this. Is my personal story of why Druid is so balancing. It's because it can do everything. So if you're in a slump, and I do this all the time, whenever I'm in a slump, I play Druid and it centers me, and I usually get out of the slump because of it. It's a safety blanket for me. Um, except this last time where I was in a slump and then I came back and I played Druid. Like first game back from Texas, I played Druid and I got 12 wins and then I went back in my slump. So hopefully today I'll get back out because I'm on, we're playing Druid again. But it doesn't have an area of weakness, so it doesn't leave you vulnerable, and so you're more easily able to kind of self-diagnose your own game if it's been
Right.
drifting in a certain direction that's not good by playing the Druid. Um, Whereas playing a lot of the other classes, it may seem it may be less obvious when you're doing something wrong if the thing you're doing wrong is either covered by the class's strength, or if the thing you're doing wrong was a weakness and you just kind of write it off anyway, right? Like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, they had a lot of lethal, but I had to keep hero powering because I'm a warlock. You don't have that with the druid. It's very honest. You have the hero power, you know what you're doing with it or not doing with it, and then you have your normal cards that generally are on curve. You have all your normal removals, normal, normal, normal. Everything is normal, and so you're just playing standard Hearthstone for the most part.
Yeah, that's basically it. And that's why I think if you are sort of learning the game,
Yes.
not necessarily a beginner, but even if you're
Mhm.
just trying to improve as a beginner or intermediate, Druid is a great class to play for
Yes.
the reasons that Adwukta talked about.
I always recommend Druid to everybody, and I know people who this is more true back in like GVG or BRM, but they say like, "Oh yeah, it's like one of my worst classes," and I'm like, "How? Are you good with Mage? Yeah. So how? Like it's not that different from Mage. It's a bit different. You can't hero power everything down because you start taking face damage, and your cards are more stable on the ground rather than spells, and there's no flame strike, but."
Right.
At the core, if you're actually playing the game based on the principles, it's the same as the mage. The mage
Yes.
just has more powerful and more diverse cards. But yeah, so I always recommend the druid. I think the most fundamentally sound players are the players who are the best with druid.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
and so like that's one of the first things that I care about. Like if I know a lot of people play mage or whatever, but sometimes people are like, oh, I average this many wins per run or whatever with what? And one of my questions is always, I know it's kind of unfair because not everyone plays druid, but it's always, what do you average with druid? Like, where is that on your list? Because if it's like low on your list, then you've gotten good at certain classes that you're playing, but you don't have a grasp of the like fundamentals that's as solid as your record would indicate. And if it's the other way around, then you probably have the fundamentals, but you're just not like clicking in to like the other classes. So That's how I feel about the Druid, and we're gonna go play a Druid run right now. So that's it for us from the Lightforge. This is Adwukta.
This is Merps. Next week, guys. See ya.